This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
She certainly is our go-to when it comes to this thing called bodywork. And there's so much benefit that comes from that to make you feel better, relieve chronic pain, other issues that come up. She also practices something called orthobionomy, which we're going to dig into and recap a number of things since we've gotten together over the last number of sessions. I love the name of her practice, New Lease on Life. That's really what you feel like when you emerge from a session, whether it's massage or whether it's orthobionomy. You know, that actually brings me to my first question before I even get to that. I got to introduce her, Jackie Davis, on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you, Steve?
Fantastic. Learned a lot from you. I got to ask this question now that it popped in my head. Orthobionomy, is it considered, quote unquote, massage?
It's very different from massage. If you look at the definition, like in Tennessee Board of Massage, it's contact with the tissues to stretch and extend them, and a couple of other things like that. Well, it does contact with tissues, but you don't necessarily stretch or extend them. It's more of you, but it does fall under bodywork in most of the states. There are some states that certify orthobionomy independently because it is so different. And a few years ago, New York State was threatening to take orthobionomy out of qualified massage therapy, but there was some response and they backed off on that. So,
wow.
So it is different, deservedly, but yes, you contact the body, you are able to look and see where there is some kind of trauma or distress in tissues, and then there's a technique for dealing with it.
Would this be right if we said you have body work as the umbrella, and underneath it would be massage, orthobionomy, and other modalities?
I would think so. That seems like a really good definition to me.
So this thing called orthobionomy, just as a recap for everybody here today, maybe you didn't hear our previous podcasts. Who is orthobionomy good for, and what can we expect in terms of results?
Well, it's good for a lot of things that normal massage isn't. So, a few things. Immediately after surgery, like within a day, you can go in and do orthobionomy work, not on the incision, but you can work on the structures around the incision and in different parts of the body. And I think I shared in one podcast that I had a knee replacement, and they pound the cap on the ends of the bone. They saw the cap of the bone off and they pound another one on. And I had so much pain in my sacral area that I couldn't sleep and I couldn't rest initially. It wasn't until I got home when my orthobionomist could come visit me that cleared up. So it's not just about working on the incision either, but it is that. It's gentle. Anybody can benefit from it. Now, they say that at a certain level, that it's probably not a good idea to do orthobionomy on someone who's in the first trimester, who's never had the work before, or something like that. So you do have to show some caution. But I remember some instructors talking about, they had a very pregnant woman that needed some work desperately. And, you know, all the things that come from pregnancy, the stretching, the joints, and the balance issues from that human being inside the body. And they had the mother on the table, and this was an instructor that was talking about it. She was working with the mother, and she had another advanced person there with her who worked on the fetus. and basically kind of just holding the fetus. And it was an advanced pregnancy. And I wouldn't know how to deal with the fetus. Although I do pregnancy massage, that would not be something that I'm trained to do at this point. But so there are things that you can do. And I don't know whether the fetus was distressed or what was going on at the time, but that always stuck with me, that you could work on a fetus using this. And how is it different? And what's it good for? So it's after surgery. It can be in some cases pregnancy with a fetus, with training. All of these have that caveat that there must be training. It's good for muscle injuries. It's good for chronic conditions that cannot get resolved. And I spoke last week about someone was telling me about going to a physical therapist in Florida, and that the physical therapist couldn't help her. And they said, okay, we're going to send you to this other guy. We send everybody to him we can't deal with. And he was able to help her, and he was an orthobionomist.
Wow.
So sometimes when nobody can figure out what's going on, an orthobionomist can. One of my instructors has this detailed program, and she goes in, and if she can't figure it out, she goes in and goes through the anatomy, looks at all the structures, and she pinpointed and said, oh, I didn't know there was a ligament there. That's in the problem area. Maybe I should go and work on that next time. He came back, she worked with it, it cleared it up. So there are lots of things that you wouldn't think that orthobionomy could help with.
Do you have to be a licensed massage therapist to be qualified to do orthobionomy?
Well, again, some states do not require massage therapy licensing. Most do. So my state, Tennessee, you must be a licensed massage therapist. Next door, which is only a few miles from me, is Georgia. And you do not have to be a licensed massage therapist there in order to get certified to do orthobionomy, but you do have to go through the 500-hour practitioner program, and it includes a lot of the elements that you would have to do if you were in massage. Like there's an anatomy requirement. It's a healthy, robust program. It takes a while to get through it.
What was the first thing for you, Jackie, that spoke to you about orthobionomy, kind of whispered in your ear and said, this is something you need to get certified in. This is gonna be a game changer, life changer for people going through challenges. You know, you practiced massage for quite some time, and this called you. What was it?
Well, I was actually in massage school. I'd gotten hurt the semester before when I was doing the practicum, and I was trying to do deep tissue work on somebody, and my body mechanics were not good. I'll just be upfront about that. But I hurt my elbow, and it was very painful. And I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this. I had to buy a band, and that would hold my tendons steady so that the work wouldn't stretch them. And then I could do some work. But the writing was on the wall. I wasn't going to last in that field. And my last semester, the instructor was doing another practicum, a different instructor, and he asked for a volunteer to do knee work. And I, at the time, had pretty advanced osteoarthritis, and there was a lot of pain. And 10 minutes, he looked at my knee, and he was going, okay, how long has this been going on? He asked questions, and he just jumped into orthobionomy. And when he started the work, I went, I've never felt anything like this before. And it was gentle, it did not hurt, and it quit hurting. I didn't have any pain. I got off the table and walked around a little bit, and I went, what is this? And so I knew then I needed to learn it.
I've never had it done before, but totally intrigued, in terms of that aha moment where it's like, this feels like it should feel. I'm feeling relief from whatever pain and challenges you have. And my wake up, I've always had traditional massage, if you will, Swedish, deep tissue. But when I had lymphatic drainage massage a couple of years ago, that was my eye opener in terms of touch, how just a light touch can be so beneficial, not just for the lymphatic drainage, but, I guess maybe I'm a typical man, like dig in there, I'm paying for this. So let me give me the most I can get from that. Doesn't have to be that way. It still is very beneficial with a light touch. So there's so many different modalities, massage out there that many of us don't ever experience. Um, what's your suggestion for somebody that maybe is considering hearing everything about orthobionomy, reaching out to a practitioner, either, you in the Chattanooga area or elsewhere?
Well, the Society of Orthobionomy International, you can go to the website and it has a practitioner section where you can put where you're located and it will pull up practitioners that are the closest to you. That would be the best place to start. And they would have any registered orthobionomists would be on that site. They automatically put us on there.
Now, you mentioned pregnancy massage before. What would be the benefits to a woman to have that type of massage?
Well, the thing about pregnancy is pretty immediately after the fetus begins forming, there's a lot of laxicity in the tendons around the pelvis getting ready for birth. That's early. And that's something that I've been taking some classes and reading about, and they weren't familiar with that initially. So this pelvis loosening starts, and that waddling sort of gait that someone who's very, very pregnant,
For sure.
that's because all the tendons are loose, and that's an attempt to get some stability when a pregnant woman whose center of balance is extremely off because of the baby bump and is trying to keep her balance and walk and not fall over. So it starts real quickly because that I can't remember exactly which hormone it is. There are quite a few involved with pregnancy that kick in there and cause the tissues around the pelvis to start stretching. So what that can do is we had a class, and so we learned that there's one side that is not good to have the mother lay on because of a blood vessel over there, or a blood transmission area. And you learn to what kind of strokes are comfortable, what areas to avoid. There are certain places on the body you shouldn't touch. Like if you do acupressure, there are like 3 or 4 spots you should not get near because those can stimulate contractions.
Wow.
So there are things like that you need to know. But it and also there was one technique they showed us where you have the woman on her side and you reach your hand over the belly and you pick up the belly, and it takes the strain off the mother, even temporarily. And the mothers always go, "Oh, that feels so wonderful." So it gives a bit of a rest from the pressure of carrying a human being inside your body.
I never even thought of it that way, that this can better prepare you for childbirth. Because, let's be honest. Yes, the woman's body's designed for that, but at the same time, you wouldn't just run a marathon if you did mild exercise. I'm not talking about being pregnant, just giving an analogy.
Right.
Like, you wouldn't enter, the New York City Marathon tomorrow unless you were trained and prepared for it. Stands a reason, giving birth, your body's not really flexing, and there's things that are happening there that you don't normally do on a daily basis. So it stands to reason that you would want to be best prepared for childbirth. Wow. Hmm.
And there are some studies, some recent studies. I was reading over this. I took um, I took an advanced pregnancy class last spring because it'd been a while since I'd taken any classes. And they've actually, there was some research backing up that women who did get massages during pregnancy tended to have an easier labor.
Wow. Wow. Makes
Less
sense.
complications.
I've heard this term, following the body's reflexes, when connected to orthobionomy. Have you ever heard that phrase?
I haven't heard it put that way, but we do work with the body reflexes.
Okay.
So there are different kinds of reflexes. There's the reflex where you touch a hot stove with your hand and you immediately pull back. And sometimes even before you're burned, sometimes you just get a little tiny blister. That's a reflex. And that comes directly from the nervous system to the muscles. It does not go through the head for expediency. There are other kinds of reflexes, though. There are reflexes at the joints. There are, and I don't know enough. It's something I'm interested in and I've been looking into, but I haven't done enough reading in it yet. But there are reflexes in the body for readjusting. So around all the joints, there are sets of muscles that are they call them paired muscles, and one does opposite of the other one, and it's like a check and balance. And if one is doing too much, the opposite one can stop it, and that's a reflex in a sense. So they're protective devices in the body. So that's one kind of them. Another one is if someone has too much weight and they're trying to lift something that's just way too heavy for them, and it's the nervous system gauges that it's going to damage the tissue, it'll just shut off and the person drops the weight because they can't hold it. The body shut it off. Now, hopefully they're not under it when it happens, but it happens. That's why people spot, I'm sure, in the gym in case something like that happens.
Oh, totally. Huh.
Yeah, because it shuts the muscles off and it's gone. You cannot stop it if it's you holding it.
Let's go back over that again for a second.
Sure.
Okay? So let's say so this is even clearer and relatable to us. You go to the gym. Let's say you're doing presses on a bench. You add more weight. Usually you got somebody spotting you there because you might get to a point where you're pushing up and you're like, I can't do anymore. And you don't want to get injured. What's actually going on there? Why would we have somebody spotting? Why after some point the muscles give out?
Because there's a fiber within the muscle area, and it is able to gauge tension, which means weight. So if you are lifting something that's really over your weight and you can't manage it, the fibers from those proprioceptors, it's a kind of proprioceptors, they shut off. And they say, nope, this is going to damage you. Nope. And they shut.
Oh, so it's a protection, built-in protection.
Protective device, yes. And so if someone, looking at weightlifters when they get really serious, like hundreds of pounds,
Right.
I don't know if that happens to them because they're used to handling those kind of weights. But someone like me that gets a too heavy dumbbell and I'm doing a fly or something, when I go up, my trainer is there because he knows if I can't move it, he'll reach over and grab it. And I don't go up without him there till I can handle it on my own. Then I'm comfortable enough to do it by myself because my body, my muscles can't handle it and they shut down.
Well, interesting. that you bring this up because I'm not crazy in terms of the gym. I just do my workout. I got to get more intentional about that too. Um, but I've experienced that, as many have, where you're going along at a certain clip with the weights, and it's almost as if it's like a switch where it's like, I'm going to, hey, what just happened? How did I lose all my strength just like that? Had no idea that that's what's going on in there. We learned something here today. Less is more. Would you say that that goes along with orthobionomy?
Absolutely. That is one of the main principles.
Hmm. Um, Explain that if you would, please.
Okay. Well, one of the foundations of the work is homeopathy. The founder, Arthur Lincoln Paz, was a Canadian and he was in England, went to osteopathy school, didn't like how rough it was back in those days in the 60s and 70s. And he kept looking for a way to do work like that was not forceful. And he was also a homeopath. And then with a homeopath, you give a little bit of a substance that causes the same symptoms that someone is already experiencing. And like if you have a terrible headache, I don't know what they would use. I'm not a homeopath, but they would use some element that makes that can give you a headache, but a teeny amount of it. And that will sometimes relieve it. It's
Amazing.
very fascinating. So less is more. And so when we're working with someone, as say we've got an elderly person, we're not going to do an hour session on a very elderly, frail person or an infant or a very young child. We're going to do maybe 30 minutes, maybe 20, maybe 10, depending on the condition of the person. So you don't want to overwork them. I got my sister in one day and I really worked her over and she didn't feel good the next day.
Hmm.
And I went, less is more, less is more, because I try to get her to come in more regularly. But when I get her, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and this.
Well, because
But
you probably don't get her that often, so it's like you want to give her the most experience that you can.
so I had to relearn that lesson one of the last times she came in. I said, okay, you know better than that. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
So yes, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And so you gauge the person as they come in, and so an hour for most people who are generally healthy is enough. But also, if you have someone who sometimes people will show like my husband, he's done in 20 or 30 minutes. He's done.
Mm.
And so I just learned that. So I go in there and I do the main things I need to do, and then I'll try to get him to come back the next day or two for more work if there's other stuff that needs to be done. But that's about all he can take. And he's not a weak person or anything. His nervous system can't do more. And he goes right to bed because it affects his nervous system so much. He goes and sleeps for about 30 minutes and then he's back to normal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it goes back to what I said when we first started here with massage. Yeah, I'm paying the therapist, so dig in there, give me everything you got. Let's say, how often do you really go for a massage? It's not that often. So yeah, I want to get the most out of that time, but not necessarily the best approach as we learn here. What is the best way to reach out to you, whether somebody is in the Chattanooga area, in the
You've
metro?
got my website, current website, and I shared last week that I am working on another one, and I do have my correct new website. It's New Lease on Life Bodywork, all lowercase.com.
Beautiful.
So within a month, it should be live.
Gotcha.
That would be a good place to reach me. And my email is New Lease on Life Bodywork at gmail.com.
And you had mentioned before, if somebody is somewhere else and not in the Tennessee area where you are, how can they learn more about orthobionomy? Is there an association website or something similar?
Right. the Society of Orthobionomy International. And that website has a practitioner locator. So anyone with at least an associate, which is about 100 hours, or up to, say, an advanced practitioner who has 100 hours of training, and instructors add on to that. So anyone with at least 100, I think it's 120 credits in orthobionomy is listed and
Wonderful.
is a current member.
Thank you so much for all this insight and information. A game changer, not just learning about orthobionomy, which would have been fine in itself in this podcast series, but massage in general and some of the mistakes or the misconceptions that we have when it comes to that. I'm telling you, Jackie, tomorrow I will be at the gym and I will be sharing what we talked about here today, that fiber and why we need a spotter, why all of a sudden your muscles give out. I thought it was just total fatigue. No, the body's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It could be the fatigue too, but there's some other things going on there.
Well, yes, but it's a certain feeling where everything's good so far, and all of a sudden, fatigue is one thing where you're lifting weights and you're getting more tired. But what you said, I've experienced it too, where I'm doing all right here. Like, what just happened? Why do I have to lower the weight? It's almost like a switch, and it's so we don't injure ourselves. Thank you, I truly appreciate it, and looking forward. If the universe says so, we'll be talking again soon.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.